Okay, so that was a little bit of a guided meditation, which was taken pretty much completely from the first paragraph of instructions from the Ānāpānasati Sutta. I added a little bit of exposition to it, very little. The instructions pretty well, spoke for themselves. And one of the things I think we can notice from these instructions, and we'll read the rest of the section on mindfulness of in and out breathing up until the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which is a whole other thing. This sutra is divided sort of into 4 sections, you could say. It's the first section is where he tells us just how great and important, this mindfulness teaching is. The second section is where he relates to it mainly from the practice of breathing. The third section is wherein he expands upon it to look at what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which is body and feelings and mind and objects of the mind. So those are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And then the last section is where the Buddha teaches where this leads to in the 7 factors of enlightenment or awakening, and 7 different levels or different qualities that when the mind becomes more awakened and enlightened, those qualities are expressed. And by developing those qualities as well, the mind becomes more awakened. So those are the 4 sections of the sutra, and they're very, in a strange way, kind of practical, telling us, what we should be focusing on in our meditation and what qualities we should be developing in our lives and in our mental lives. So it's a very much, it's a very core teaching in terms of what we call practice. So a lot of the Buddhist teachings are describing reality when we talk about the 4 noble truths and the reality of dukkha and about samsara and nirvana and about the 3 marks of existence and anicca, anatta, and dukkha. And a lot of the teachings in karma. Okay. Those teachings don't necessarily give us practices to realize what is meant by them. And yet in this sutra, we very much do. The emphasis of this teaching and this talk that the Buddha gave is, what we can do as practitioners. So that makes it a very central text for people who are involved in the Dharma practice. So that's why I want to look at it in depth with you. And we just went over in practice the baseline of it, which was the mindfulness of breath. And as we saw, the mindfulness of breath was a simple, direct placing attention on a physiological process. Now, physiological process of the in and out breath. Inhale, exhale. But it's taking your attention, bringing it to the fore, he said. Bring it to the front of your mind. If your attention is kind of like a spotlight, okay, like a flashlight, you place it on your object. And, you bring it out of sort of the inner conversation we're having. That's when he says, bring it to the fore. Take it out of all the, looking at your own life. This is not the time to look at your life right now, right? We're looking at a process of living, which is the breath, okay? So we're looking at something that's happening in the present and not reflecting, okay? We're not, strange to say, we're not looking for meaning right now, okay? We don't want to make sense of it. We just want to observe it, right? The sense will come on its own. Right now, we do want to train the mind to place the attention on a physiological process, which is called the breath, in and out breath. In addition, as Soph was saying before, that we live in a physical, biochemical reality, and we call it the body. So the Buddha is placing then, recognizing that reality. We're not just a breath happening in air, but it's a breath happening in body. So we become aware of this physical body. And here's a matter of choice too, which I always try to emphasize, is the third level of this simple teaching of the in and out breath was there's the breath in and out, long, short, whatever it is, deep, shallow. Okay, clear or congested if you're, with a cold. Mindfulness of body. This consciousness is functioning in a body. The breath is happening in a body. I can be aware of the physicality, the weight, the length, the pressure, the temperature of this body, right? The comfort or discomfort of it, the different sensations I have. And then, as we saw, I'm breathing in and I'm calming the body. As he said here, how did he put it? I breathe in and I'm aware, breathing in the body, breathing out, calming the body, and breathing in, I'm calming the body, breathing out, I'm calming the body. So, my whole sense of body, the sense of body that I have. Breathe in and breathe out. And by staying put and keeping still and allowing your breath to be a technique that can calm the body. And this is something where we bring in not only observing, but we're kind of creating some ease, some intentional ease, some intentional calm. Okay? And it's opening up this sense of, when that deepens, that calming deepens, and the attention deepens, it is the practice of samadhi or shamatha, where you have the breath and the breath of focus and the concentration on breath, in addition to a very calm and still body, can create an attention that is, very at ease and even joyful. Okay, and that's the samadhi. So that's the calming, and it's not something that just happens. I think this is a point here that's being made. The calming doesn't just happen. It's part of our intention of being here. So yeah, initially when we do come to sit in meditation, we're not coming if we're stressed saying, I'm just going to stay with being stressed. I'm going to stay with being tense. No, part of our intention of coming to meditation practice is to become more calm and more at ease. Now, we want to let go of that goal at some point, but in the beginning, we can't have that goal. And the Buddha points this out, directly saying, I'm going to calm my body. Yeah? And when you calm the body and the body can be more at ease, the mind tends to follow. And so when the breath can become longer and deeper, the body relaxes. And as the body relaxes, the mind becomes more settled. Right? So we're looking at the relationship between body and mind here. And it's a very close one. And it's a very sort of interactive one. And that's something that we notice in our breathing meditation. Okay? You let the breath, and you use the breath as an aid to calming the body, which then is an aid to calming the mind. So I'm going back to the text right now, which is, I'm going to look at it, and I'm on where he says, it's on the number 5 here. It's on the beginning of the second page. I think, no, the beginning of the third page, sorry. And we're just putting it on the screen. All right. Beginning of the third page, and it's has the number 5 on it. There you go. Great. Super. Thank you. Okay. So this is still the instructions for the breathing meditation. And all of this is happening in tandem, in coordination with the breath. I breathe in, I'm aware body. I breathe out, I'm aware body. I breathe in, I'm calming body. I breathe out, I'm calming body. He trains himself. I will breathe in, sensitive to rapture. He trains himself. I will breathe out, sensitive to rapture. He trains himself. I will breathe in, sensitive to pleasure. He trains himself. I will breathe out, sensitive to pleasure. He trains himself. I will breathe in, sensitive to mental fabrication. He trains himself. I will breathe out, sensitive to mental fabrication. Okay, those are all the things that are happening in your mind. Fabrication, or, you know, all ideas and thoughts, and the mental, just the talk we're having. Okay. He trains himself. I will breathe out, sensitive to mental fabrication. He trains himself. I will breathe in, calming mental fabrication. He trains himself. I will breathe out, calming mental fabrication. All right. So here we see the breath is starting. We're always keeping the breath there as the foundation, the basis of our awareness. And while we breathe, and it keeps you steady, it keeps you anchored, and it keeps you centered, so that when you have other experiences, rapture, you see, if you get real deep calm, one of the things that the Buddha points out that happens when calm is deepened is rapture. Rapture is real strong pleasure and joy. Okay. And, you know, you can get some people start seeing that as a goal in meditation, is to have this pleasure that you get sometimes when you're very still and calm, and the samadhi, which is this kind of pleasure of body and mind. And it can even be this physical energy of a strong sort of almost a sense of high that one can get through deep calming awareness and the stillness, which is the samadhi, the calm abiding. So you have you combine concentration with stillness and focus and lack of distraction, and the body then can experience, and the mind can experience some rapture and pleasure. And what the Buddha is kind of saying is not, you know, kol kavod, you got somewhere special. He's actually just saying you just notice it like anything else. And you notice all the ideas that are coming in your mind and all the mental chatter. And you notice the way that you're creating ideas and the way you have, you know, thoughts about your body and your mind and your experience. Okay. So all of this is just, you know, par for the course, we say. It's just part of the mindfulness that we're bringing into the breath. You're mindful of breath, and you got the breath, and you're mindful with the breath. You're breathing in, you're mindful body. You're breathing in, you're mindful breathing out, and you're mindful of calming, of the body calming. Breathing in and breathing out. And I'm aware of, with the breath, remember it's my anchor, of all the other things that are going on during meditation. Pleasure, and sometimes feeling really super rapture, and of the different mental activities that are going on. And also, what's pretty interesting is just like we can calm the body, so too, through breathing meditation, we can calm the mind. The mind, if we don't get caught up in what's happening in the mental activities, then when we just observe it without it being a big deal, what happens? It calms. It calms. So we're breathing in, and that intention, just in the same way the body is going to relax if we bring that intention into it, breathe in, breathe out, body relaxing. So too, we can have that intention with mental activity. You know, many people experience different obstacles mentally in meditation. One of those obstacles can be in the classic 5 hindrances. But one of the very common one is restlessness. Restlessness, or mental activity that seems just, running. And running commentary, running thinking about this or that, or just a very active mind, or very distracted mind, okay? Or some boredom and doubting and questioning what's going on, or just, lots of thoughts happening, and you think, well, I can't be meditating with all these thoughts going on. And, Suzuki Roshi, I always quote him as saying, when someone asked him, I have so many distractions, so many thoughts, and he simply said, what's wrong with your thoughts? The thoughts are not the problem. The following the thoughts is the problem. You see? Observing and following are two different ways of relating to mental activity. When we observe thoughts, we are staying connected strongly to the mindfulness of breath. And by staying with breath, we can then observe other things happening without getting pulled by them. Because you've got something that you're holding on to. You've got a secure base. What the mindfulness of breath is offering us is that secure base, so that you have something to stand on to. You have a seatbelt. It's like your inner seatbelt, okay? So that, if you bump into something, you're not going to be thrown out of the window. So think of the mindfulness of breath as kind of like that inner seatbelt, or when you're riding the bus, is the pole you're holding on to. So when the bus turns, or there's something really interesting outside, you don't get, you don't fall over. You're holding on to that pole, okay? It keeps you centered and grounded. And that's what the breath does. So therefore, when we see other things, we can observe them without, getting lost. And that's why the breath is always mentioned here. I breathe in, and then I observe this. I breathe out, I observe this. I breathe in, I observe this. I breathe out, I observe this. Don't forget the other word that's used in the sutra, which is he trains himself. She trains herself. So there's a training that's happening, which is reminding us in a very gentle way that it doesn't just happen. That, yeah, I'm going to be mindful of breath, and then I can observe mental fabrication, as he says, or all these thoughts going on in my head, whether it's restlessness or doubt or anger or, sadness or whatever thoughts and feelings and ideas that come up. Don't think that you can just observe those without having something that's going to keep you steady. We train ourselves by staying with the breath and observing the phenomena that's happening in our meditation. The breath keeps us steady so that we don't just start, I've spent the last 10 minutes thinking about, what happened to me this morning and how I would have done things differently. Well, you can't go there because there's nothing to do about it. And right now you're supposed to be breathing. So with the breath though, I keep coming back to it. Now, you train yourself to do this because you also know and can expect that there are many times when we will forget to observe the breath. And so we fly away to this interesting, memory or plan or thought. And then we remember, oh yeah, I really should be centering with the breath. I need that. And then I bring my attention back to the fore, right to the front of my mind, and I locate the breath again. And then when I'm centered on the breath, I can allow myself to observe other things. Like there's a dog barking outside my window, right? And when I center on the breath, I hear the sound. I acknowledge that there's a dog barking, but I don't start thinking, Whose dog is that? Is that the German Shepherd? I wish they'd keep it inside, you know, like why do they let it out every night? I don't go to that story because that's just wasted mental energy that starts to reinforce some negative judgments or fantasies if it's pleasurable. Instead, notice the sound, but I stay centered because I'm using my breath. So this is the mindfulness of in and out breath and how we can then extend it and include other things, including pleasurable and painful sensations, and mental activity, and the calming of mental activity. Okay? The calming of it is by observing it through the activity of the breath.
Daniel.
Yeah.
I heard a nice metaphor by Thich Nhat Hanh that I think can be helpful about how to deal with strong emotions. So he says it's like a tree, and the mind is like when a storm comes, the leaves on the top of the tree are like moving fast, and there's a lot of movement. But if you go to the stomach, to the breath, so to the root of the tree, it's more steady. So if a storm comes, you should go to the root and not stay with the leaves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good metaphor. It's a good metaphor, and whether it's the trunk or the roots, but you've got something, you know, stable there and grounded. And you know what? There's always going to be a storm. Like it's the nature of, you know, our environment to blow wind and to move us. So there's always going to be activity happening. Let's put it that way. So, you know, anytime you sit, things are going to happen. Mental activity is going to be generated. You just don't need to, you know, become involved in that. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So this is the subtle point and the distinction to make, is that mental activity is going to happen when you sit, because the mind is an organ, it thinks, that's what it does. But you have a choice whether you are going to follow those thoughts or not, right? You can't stop the wind from blowing, right? You can't stop the leaves from moving. But you can feel secure and let it do what it does without going up there and trying to, you know, to touch it and hold it. So we look up at those leaves and we look at those thoughts and we accept them as blowing. And we base our stability in something more basic. And that's the physiological breathing and the stillness of body. Right? So then the mind is going to do what it does. You know, the mind is going to do what it does. Our sense of presence, and here's the shift that's important in meditation that I want to emphasize. An important shift when we do the practice of meditation, an important shift is that we don't judge our sense of self and our presence on our thoughts or mental activity, but rather on something more basic, which is the body and the breath. So there's sort of this harmony and a unity of three aspects of our sense of being, which are functioning at every moment. And there's the physical body, there's the motion of breath, and there's the activity of the mind, mental fabrication, as was written here. And those three are happening all the time. That's why in the first paragraph here, the Buddha was talking about breath, and he was talking about body, and he was talking about mental, activity. Those three things are what you're going to encounter and deal with when you are sitting. If you hear sounds or you feel discomfort or it's cold or hot, it's not the environment you're dealing with. It's body and mind that you're dealing with, okay? And so in order not to get lost in mind, which is where we spend most of our day, what we're going to do is we're going to lower the attention to the more physical and physiological aspects of our presence, of our being, and that's the breath and the body. So that's what we could say is our trunk and the roots. The leaves are great, the branches are great, but for us to feel stable and calm, we need to practice and train ourselves to be more aware of breath and body. And that's what this is helping us with. So yeah, that kind of stability will lead to calm, and that calm will lead to greater states of awareness, which we'll get to. Now, if anyone has a question about this, then you should ask or comment, because we're just going to go through this a bit. I want to get to the next two paragraphs here. Okay.
Daniel?
Yeah.
May I ask before we go on a short question?
Of course. Yeah, sure.
First of all, a comment. In your guided meditation, before we started going over the text, you gave a very beneficial instruction to pay attention to how long the breath is. And I'm pointing that out because in the sutta itself, it says he trains himself. I don't remember how it's formulated, but if the breath is short or long, and then it could create some sort of confusion as to having to decide if my breath is short or long, some kind of an analysis, like in the more Burmese way of pinpointing phenomena. So I find your instruction very beneficial. It doesn't matter if it's long or short, but I'm paying attention to how long it is, to the actual duration of it without defining it. So that's a comment. And the question, we cannot find in the instructions, as we've read them so far, kind of a way to know when to move forward to the next stage. He trains himself, etc., with the in and out breath and the body and the mental fabrication. So what would you say? How can I know when is a good time to move on to the next level during a sitting or in general in practice?
Okay, good. So first of all, with the long and short breath and the way we can look at it. So the way I understood and the way I understand when he says I train myself to see long breath, I train myself to see short breath, he's not giving two options, he's giving all the options, everything in between this as well. Like, whatever your breath is, that's what I noticed, right? It's long, it's short, it's anything. I mean, he just didn't go through all the options, but everything in between here, that's sort of what it is. And that's true with, I also think when he said, I train myself and I notice rapture and I notice pleasure. Well, there's also the other things we may notice as well, and a lot of other mental states and emotions and feelings we may notice too. You went to some of the ones where you're like improving your consciousness. So when your focus and concentration becomes stable and strong, then, as I said, the samadhi starts to strengthen and deepen, and that creates rapture and pleasure. But that's not always the case. So we should notice the other things too. How do you know when to expand and shift the object? Well, one of the things that's difficult in our situation, and not only during the time when we are restricted to computer meetings, but before this whole situation of the virus and also after, is that people don't have a relationship. Most people who are involved in Buddha Dharma don't have a relationship with a teacher that is, expressing your practice on a weekly or even daily or weekly basis, which is when we are involved in a practice, it needs to be in a Sangha with a teacher, and there needs to be some sharing of that, and that will help a lot with understanding what practices one should be doing, and how they should be adjusted or deepened or perhaps reviewed. So I think that when the Buddha is talking about this training, he's not talking about a monk by herself or himself. He's talking about a monk in the Sangha with a teacher. And I'm just saying, like, that's how originally we would know, is we'd be discussing this in an interview, right? And you'd be telling your experience. And then the teacher would kind of identify and say, okay, well, now we're going to spend some time observing mind and calming mind. So, I mean, and in Zen, it was done often through koans. If we don't have that option and access, then basically we need to spend longer time than we think with the basics, okay? But it's not that you finish with it, go on the next level. Is that you open up and you explore, say, mindfulness of sensations, or mindfulness of emotions, and with the breath, and calming mind with the breath. And that can be part of, after you've stabilized awareness of breath, you can expand that, and you have to first, in a realistic way, feel pretty stable with your mindfulness of breath. You then, in a session, you don't just say, okay, now I'm going to do this. You always start with mindfulness of breath. You spend at least 5 or 10 minutes with that. And then you can open it to include some different aspects of your experience, sensations, or mental activity. Okay. Those are the two that we were expressed here, that were expressed here. But you never finish with the breath. That's the thing. So you may find, okay, I was practicing with this and training with this. And then the next session, I'm just going to be training with the breath. Okay. And calming body. Right. Or I'm going to work on mindfulness of body. And then the next session, I'm going to be on breath again. Then we never finish. So that's one thing that's important, is that you never finish the basics. It's like when I was talking about scales with, virtuoso pianists are going to go back and review their scales. So we need to keep reviewing the mindfulness of breath. And you need to, I think it's important to share your meditation experience, either with a teacher or a spiritual friend, so that even just by expressing it, it's no longer just your own internal thing, your own trip, but you're even just hearing it. It's important that it's not a purely private experience. This is something that we tend to want our meditation to be very personal, and the point of meditation is that it's not personal. It's about getting over the personal, right? It's about getting over it. So that's one of the ways that we can know. So one is that you experiment and you feel stable in a certain practice, a training that you're doing, say with breath or with body. You start each session with going over that, and then perhaps expanding to another object of your awareness, object of mindfulness. And it's a good thing to end each session, the last 5 minutes at least, with just returning to breath. Whether we're doing metta, or whether we're doing body awareness, whether we're doing awareness of mind, or whether we're doing open awareness, we start with the mindfulness of breath and we end with the mindfulness of breath. Okay, so those are the kind of bookends to our practice. And we share our meditation experience with a trusted friend or teacher. That's also something I think will help us keep it sincere and real.
Thank you, Daniel.
So, the other thing that some people have done in the past that I think is not a bad idea at all is, and if you don't have a friend or a teacher, another thing that one can do is to keep a meditation journal, to keep a practice journal. And so that you write down on a daily basis, or, you know, if you can't manage daily, then as often as you can, right? You write down a journal of your practice. You know, not only what you do, but how it's going and what you're struggling with and what you're progressing with, so that it's no longer just a personal thing. You're externalizing it. You're getting it out there in the world, so that it's something you can see and feel like you are understanding, not just, you know, in your own mind. So practice journal is not a bad thing. I know a lot of people, it's helped. That's another suggestion. So I want to go to the last 2 paragraphs, and that's all we're going to have time for tonight, which is number 9. Okay, we're here, yeah, great. Okay.
Daniel?
Yeah.
Just a word. We are in a Sangha, and you are the teacher, and therefore we have a teacher, but then the difference is that you're saying that we need to have a one-on-one teacher.
Well, what I mean is that one-on-one teacher is important. I don't know if some people in this group have other groups and other teachers as well. Okay, but I definitely encourage anyone who wants to write or call me. I mean, when we are meeting, one of the things that we would do during our meeting is to I would have time where people would come after and ask questions. I was really happy with that.
But ask a question after the Sangha as a group or as an...
No, if it's about your own practice, it's better.
Sorry, the audio cut off. I cannot hear you well now.
Can you hear me now?
I don't hear you. There's... everybody else is hearing normally. For me, it's gone, the audio. Oh, yeah, something happened. I don't know.
Is it, can other people hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Asaf, maybe mute your microphone.
Perhaps when my video is out, it's better.
Maybe. Is that better?
I still cannot hear. Something happened. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry also. So what I have to say is that
I don't hear anything.
Push mute, Azaf. Okay. So what I want to say is that I'm more than happy to talk to any individual about your practice and about any challenges or progress that is happening, and whether I can answer that or not, I'd be, if it's something that's beyond what I understand, I'm definitely comfortable saying that. And if it's something that you can't hear anything. Okay. So Asaf, you can't even hear me. The audio is cut off, chopped. Write me an email. That's what I can say to you, Asaf. Write me, Asaf. So that's all I can say. No, but thanks. Thanks, Eve. Okay. Good. Yeah, so that's for anyone who wants to discuss and think about your practice, because it's helpful to be able to express it and then to reflect upon it together. It's definitely helpful, because it's not just your own inner journey. This is something I'm trying to express, is that your practice is not, I know it's strange to say, is not your practice. We're doing it to kind of try to get out of ourselves, get out of our own, sense of me and mine, and the smallness that we are often feeling as very separate. And so sharing what we're going through with our practice is a way of stepping outside of sometimes, our comfort zone, because our comfort zone is very much about me, right? And to understand that also what most people go through in meditation is what most people go through in meditation. You know what I mean? Is that most of our struggles are common because the human self is very common. Your personality is unique, but what you have been struggling with in your practice is what the Buddha taught about 2,500 years ago. And throughout history, we have been dealing with dukkha in similar ways. The dukkha of our strong attachment to ourselves. And so your practice is not about yourself. It's trying to get beyond self a little bit. And that's why, you know, working on that together is just another way of doing that. So yeah, basically I encourage you, yeah, if you feel comfortable and you'd like to ask questions about your own practice, not in the group time. Something else I think that we could do on a video is we could, this week it's already too late for that, but maybe next week what we can do is perhaps we'll devote the last half hour to questions about our own practice. You know, we can do that. And then of course, if you don't want to speak in a group, we can have an individual meeting or email exchange. So all of that is possible. Of course, the best is when we will get back to sitting together, and sitting together is a wonderful thing. And then having direct conversation is also, you know, the essence of the spiritual, you know, friendship and teacher. So.
Daniel, I was hoping I could ask a quick question or a remark. Well, first of all, I just want to ask, which medium would you prefer to be contacted on? Email or, I don't know, WhatsApp or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the easiest, I guess the most accessible. I mean, you could send me your laptop. Your order is not great. You can send me a WhatsApp, and then we can set a time either to talk, or if you prefer writing on email. It just depends whether you want to talk or whether you want to write. If you want to write, it's email. If you want to talk, then you should send a WhatsApp. And I'm fine with either way. Like, I really don't care. So that's fine. And my email and WhatsApp, at the end of this, I'll write it down, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you can have
Or
it. Yeah.
ask Roy, probably.
Yeah, Roy has all that. Or
And
Jonathan.
also,
all that.
I wanted to say, just in relation to meditation, and I don't know if you remember, but last week I kind of asked, I think it was last week, I was like struggling a bit with my day-to-day practice.
Yeah.
And you've said, you know, you've mentioned how, you know, we should look at our whole day as practice time, as opposed to just those like maybe 20, 30, whatever minutes we do in the morning. And then I actually have been reading a book by Tenzin Palmo, the Tibetan nun whom I love. And she said that, not in the book, in the video of her, teaching of her that I've seen, and she said the exact same thing. And that completely changed my whole perspective of what the practice is, how to approach it, and how to kind of relate to it. And I just wanted to say thank you, because that was like kind of a real moment for me of like a coin dropping. It was really nice. That's it. So thank you very, very much.
Great. Look, we need the truth is, we need practice most when we're not sitting. That's when we need the practice the most. So it can't just be about our sitting time, because otherwise we're gonna have a lot of problems outside of our sitting time. What I want to connect to with this specific sutra and teaching is how really useful a few mindful breaths can be. If I want to kind of summarize this whole sutra, it's just mindfulness of breath will calm your body and mind almost immediately. That's not magic. That's just reality. That when you stop placing your focus on external things and you turn back to the breath in the middle of, you know, a stressful situation, you will immediately feel some calm in body and mind. And that is a practical, physiological, and spiritual truth. So I think it's really, this sutra is just so helpful. And it makes the practice something that is so applicable and flexible to every situation. So you can be in a stressful phone call, or in a stressful, I don't know, shopping situation or work situation or transportation, and to turn the mind back to the breath, and everything is brought back to this place, is to find your center again. And that center is one of calm and of awareness, of calm awareness. So that really is, I think, if there's one thing we can get from this teaching in this sutra, is that each one of us has the ability to train the mind, the body, and the breath to come back in harmony in a single moment of attention. And that attention is realized by turning the mindfulness to your process of in and out breathing. It's really, just, it's not my word you need to take for it, and it's not even the Buddha's word you need to take for it. The teaching is there. It's your experience now, and that you can play with and experiment, especially when you're out and about during the day and things might feel a bit difficult, and you need to recover a bit of calm and even find a bit of pleasure in your moment. And that will come from placing your attention to the front of your breathing. It's just train a bit with that this week, and experiment and observe what happens. Generally, taking 3 breaths, stopping and bringing the mind to attention thrice will center you. And the longer you maintain it, the more calm you will create. So I encourage all of you this week to take these practical instructions. Let me finally finish with the last paragraph here, because I really want to get to the 4 foundations of mindfulness for next week. It's the end of this section is really important. Okay. He trains himself thinking, I will breathe in sensitive to the mind. He trains himself, I will breathe out sensitive to the mind. He trains herself, I will breathe in satisfying the mind. He trains herself, I will breathe out satisfying the mind. He trains himself, I will breathe in steadying the mind. He trains himself, I will breathe out steadying the mind. He trains herself, I will breathe in releasing the mind. He trains herself, I will breathe out releasing the mind. Okay. Again, I did speak of this earlier, the calming effect, the choice we have, the training and the practice. And here the Buddha is spelling it out pretty clearly, that you're not just observing it without anything to do. You're bringing in the intention of creating a more peaceful state of mind. You are creating some acceptance. You're satisfying your mind with what you got. Okay, this is it. Okay, I'm okay with this. The satisfying is the acceptance there. Sensitive meaning you are paying attention and noticing it. You're going to notice the subtle thought activities, the subtle mental activities. That's sensitive to mind. You're satisfied with the mind, meaning I accept it as it is. Okay. You are steadying the mind by breathing. And the more you connect with the breath, the steadier the mind becomes. When you're just focused on external things, the mind also runs outside. When you focus on the internal breath, then the mind becomes more steady. Okay, I always use the image of those snow glass balls. We shake it and the snow, fills up the glass because the water is moving. And then if you place it on the table, it all settles and then the water becomes clear. So that's the mind. When it's moving around, it's agitated. When you focus on the breath and you steady the mind, the snow settles and it becomes more clear. So that's the steadying mind. I'm sensitive to the mind. I notice the mind activity. I notice what's going on. I'm satisfied with it, meaning I accept it as it is. I don't need anything else. Let it be. I steady it by focusing on the breath. And the last one was I release. I release the mind. Meaning I'm not going to be attached to anything that is that, you go your own way. And the thoughts, when the mind is more steady, then that mental activity passes. Any thought you were having 10 minutes ago, where is it now? Tell me, please. Where are those thoughts? Okay. Any mental activity you were having an hour ago or 2 minutes ago, where is it? Gone. Okay. Now we just let that release. We're no longer going to be grasping at the sense of self as the mind creates it. That's the release of the mind. Yeah. You go your own way. I'm staying right here with the steady breath, my mindful awareness of this moment. So those 4 ways of relating to mind are extremely helpful. You're looking at the mind not as the center of your universe. You're looking at the mind as just another thing that's happening in your life. The mental activity is another thing happening in your life. But we take our mind as like, my thoughts are me. I think, therefore I am. No. You think, therefore you're upset. That's the better equation. So if you let those thoughts just be released, then you'll find some peace and calm in your moment, right? You don't need to get upset about those thoughts. So I am sensitive to the mind. I notice what's going on in my mental activity. I'm satisfied with the mind, meaning, okay, accept it as it is. So be it. I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm desiring, I'm, fed up or bored, I'm annoyed, I'm excited. Thinking about this conversation, thinking about this planet, thinking about this show, thinking about this book, thinking about this movie, thinking about this dinner, whatever, I'm satisfied with that, meaning, okay, you are what you are. I steady the mind by breathing in. And by breathing out, I steady the mind. Just like I was breathing in and breathing out and calming the body, I can also calm the mind. I'm not saying get calm, what's that? But by focusing on breath and not getting involved with mental activity, but simply seeing it for what it is, the mind steadies. And finally, I release the mind, meaning I'm letting those thoughts go their own way. They can go their own way, yeah. And they will. No thought remains. Okay, no thought remains. So that those 4 kind of approaches to mental activity are all contained within mindfulness of breath. And that is why mindfulness of breath is a very deep practice that we need to train in order to find greater release. So I actually don't want to go anymore because I think that's definitely enough for tonight. There's more to read, but the last paragraph before the Four Foundation Mindfulness we'll start with next week. But for now, I think that's enough. That's my feeling. So I'd like us to finish now with a couple of minutes to sit quietly. So bring your attention to the front of your mind and notice your breathing. Breathing in, I notice my in-breath. And breathing out, I notice my out-breath. Breathing in, I notice how my body feels. And breathing out, I notice my body. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I calm my body. Breathing in, I notice if there are thoughts. Breathing out, I notice the thoughts are happening. Breathing in, I let the mind relax. Breathing out, I let my mind relax. Breathing in, I notice the thoughts pass. Breathing out, I notice thoughts have passed.